And this meeting will be dedicated to the discussion of the current issues under the mandate of General Secretary, and the general situation there is here, which is still in the deep institutional crisis that prevents it from playing a significant role in ensuring security in the region. The situation isn't gonna change until the Western countries stop using the Vienna platform for their interests and violate the principles of the organization, and thus destroying it. Russia never refused joint, mutually respectful work for the benefit of all member states of the OSCE. At the same time, it talked openly about the problems that appeared inside the organization and in the region. We expect a constructive and consistent exchange of opinion. Let's go to Ukraine. The Ukrainian fighters continued terror. On February 27, the Ukrainian army attacked with a drone a civilian vehicle in the city of Gryvoron, the Belgorod region, killing one civilian and wounding one. In general, in recent days, at least 6 civilians were wounded in the region. On February 28th, in the village of Mala Lepetiha, following a drone attack on the ambulance, a woman with the children were killed. They were being taken to the hospital. In the same village, another drone attacked first aid station. This episode of our briefing is addressed directly to the High Representative of the European Union on Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas. I don't know she uses or how she felt, but she dared to say that civilians of Russia, in Russia, are not being killed from the Kiev regime. She said that in Munich, at the so-called conference on security policy, every week during our briefing, and Mr. Miroshnik every day talks about the crimes of the Kiev regime. First of all, stressing the crimes against civilians, against children, women, against civil infrastructure. How low is this? And this is demonstrated by many Euro-Atlantics and EU representatives to turn a blind eye on this. But we know something else, how through the American agency, the US aid gave money that went for procurement of strategic silence. As a response to the strategic silence of the EU, we will strategically speak. In the same village, as I said, a drone attacked a first aid station, wounding one civilian. 2 utility service workers were severely wounded. Following artillery shellings in the city of Alyoshka and the village of Rybalchi, 2 people were wounded. In DPR, since February 27, 1 civilian was killed, 11 wounded, including a child born in 2016. In February, the Ukrainian armed forces opened fire against the city 537 times. They did it with the use of long-range heavy artillery pieces. More than 80 people were wounded, 3 people killed. On February 28th, in Makeyevka, a teenager born in 2010 blew up on a PFM-1 mine. As the enemy fire was suppressed, Russian soldiers continued to inspect the liberated village of Ruska Porechnoye. several more bodies of locals tortured to death by the Ukrainian Nazis were found. On March the 2nd, the chairman of the Investigative Committee of Russia, Mr. Vostrikin, said that in February 2022, Ukrainian formations attacked 34 entities of the Russian Federation. Those regions are outside the zone of the special military operation, and the most deadly weapons are supplied by Great Britain, Canada, Germany, and some other Western countries to the Zelensky regime. 652 civilians were killed, including 23 children, 2,980 people were wounded, including 169 children. They don't have conscience, don't have a heart. They don't have humanity. I mean, those who do not know this, it is impossible not to know about it. We've been talking about it every day for several years. We translate it into different languages of the world, and our representatives at the international platforms talk about it regularly. But this should be punished. The Russian courts continue to pronounce verdicts to the Ukrainian neo-Nazis and mercenaries. 13 years in prison was given to the mercenary from Georgia, Shali. Pilots of the Ukrainian forces, Dmitry Shimansky and Alexander Morozov, received 26 and 22 years in prison. They planned terror attacks in Russia in April 2023. The Russian law enforcement will continue their work to bring all the responsible to justice. On March the 2nd, London hosted the so-called the European Summit with the participation of leaders of 14 countries: Great Britain, Germany, Denmark, Spain, Italy, Canada, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland. Don't be surprised that Canada was present, although it was the EU meeting. Then Norway, Poland, Romania, Finland, France, the Czech Republic, Sweden, as well as leaders of the European Commission, European Council, and the NATO General Secretary. But the Russophobes from the Baltic states was not there. Probably they invited only those who still is able to give money for the needs of Ukraine. And the Baltic states for many years do not produce anything and are unable to do it to influence the situation. The get-together in London was planned in advance, but after the fiasco of Zelensky during the meeting in the White House, became a comforting meeting of supporters of unconditional support for the Kiev regime, so to say, the support of the Kiev regime until the last Ukrainian. But one of the key results of this get-together is the agreement to continue military support to Ukraine. Zelensky was promised a loan worth 5.7 billion pounds. In addition to this, Custom announced a new package finance in the agreement of the British loan support to Ukraine. Under it, more than 5,000 missile modules for a defense system will be produced. The launchers and war rooms will be produced in Ukraine. The participants of the so-called summit agreed upon a number of principles that they are going to be guided by in terms of Ukraine. They want to put more pressure, more sanctions pressure on Russia. It's because they suffer from them, from our counter-sanctions, and to ensure the participation of Kiev in the peace deal and to strengthen their capabilities to deter the aggression in the future. But the main aim, according to Zelensky, was not achieved. by the organizers. The line of those who are willing to join the coalition of the willing to defend Ukraine and to guarantee peace was not there. There was an impression that everybody was concerned not with the saving of the Kiev regime, but to preserve the transatlantic solidarity. And now some more news. Recently, do you remember they had plans, peace plan of Zelensky, then there was other victory plans, but now a new French-Britain initiative is spread. On March the 2nd, a plan was outlined. It provides for safe conditions for deployment in Ukraine of European forces as a peacekeeping contingent. There's no legal ground for this, no decisions. They came up with it and just launched the process. They proposed to declare a truce for a month with no hostilities in air, sea, and no strikes on the energy infrastructure. This will ensure a more, I quote, a more reliable truce, end of quote, that can lead to a peaceful agreement. And those who proposed it are going to present it to the US President Donald Trump to have his support, and Russia will see it without prior arrangement. So past experience didn't teach them anything. So let us see. In reality, we deal with the aspiration to achieve a pause for the Ukrainian army and to prevent the collapse of the front line. This pause will be used to strengthen the military potential of Ukraine, and further attempts of revenge under the scenario of the conflict will inevitably be renewed on a new scale. And the formulation of these thoughts are not even hidden. Everybody understands what they are talking about. Merkel and Hollande helped them very much. They said that for this very purpose, the Minsk agreements were used and negotiations to implement them. But in fact, they only pumped the Kiev regime with armaments. We'll reiterate. We need strong agreements about an ultimate settlement. Without this, any kind of truces or regroupings, all of these are unacceptable because this will lead to the exactly opposite results. It is unacceptable to deploy armed forces in Ukraine, as everybody is talking about right now in the EU. They are coming up with some kind of European armies and foreign contingents, military bases, the coalition of like-minded states. We heard many things, but our stance was expressed by the leadership of the country. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, said that many times. And of course, I would like you to hear this. We heard a lot. For example, Macron made a statement yesterday, and I think we'll probably talk about it later on today. There's one thing that takes bravery to understand. The statement of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is of notice. She called for like-minded states in London on March the 2nd to, I'm sorry, I will quote, it is a direct quote, She called on all the like-minded states, I quote, to supply, to take Ukraine in the position of force and to turn it into a steel porcupine. We read and heard a lot, but they can go even further. But do you know how it sounds in German? Stachelschwein. You heard it correctly. It is not a word play. It's means swine with shapes. Did we understand you correctly, Ursula von der Leyen? Are you going to turn Ukraine into this? I think that the Ukrainian regime long ago turned into this very swine with quills, into a steel porcupine, and in the position of force, in a strong position. If we look at this phrase with some effort, but seriously, it means that no independent role for Ukraine besides this steel porcupine from the West was not assigned. And the situation that Ukraine is going to find itself in terms of Euro-Atlantic structures, not Ukrainians, not citizens of their own country, not representatives elected by the people of Ukraine. They are not going to talk about it, but the EU and NATO representatives are going to talk about it, as well as representatives of other structures that has no connection, neither geographic or some other, with Ukraine. People like Ursula von der Leyen, because they had this authority, have to define the situation in Ukraine.
I can ask you just one question. What is it about democracy right now? This freedom of the people with which these officials from Brussels talked a lot about. Yet it happens that we can bring the dictator, like it was in Ukraine, and then to dictate to its dictator their own will from the outside. This is a bizarre situation, but on the other hand, the history of the West repeats itself. And right now, we would like to talk about forced mobilization in Ukraine. On the 27th of February, the Minister of the main intelligence services of Ukraine charged for the failure of the forced mobilization in Ukraine, of course, Russia, which allegedly discredits this process among Ukrainians. Am I right, Mr. Budanov, that Ukrainians adore this mobilization? They just sometimes stick upon some information documents from Russia, and they just can change their mind out of a sudden and not to go to be recruited. Am I right that all Ukrainians vote for this forced mobilization? That they are trying to be in the rolls, hold demonstrations of all those authorities so that they can be recruited as soon as possible. Am I right, Mr. Budanov? Is that Russia only which deconvinces themselves? I think it's quite bizarre. It's nonsense. This is just lack of any aid, is just impotence of the authorities, which does a lot in order to not to bear responsibility. And I would like to remind Mr. Bodanov to look more often into social networks and to analyze the situation with the mobilization. And that hunt for its own citizens to refill its manpower. I would like to remind you that this regime recruits about 28 and 33,000 of people, while the losses exceed the number of mobilized. In November 2024, the losses amounted to more than 60,000 people. In December 2024, more than 48,000. In January of this year, more than 51,000 people. And in February, about 38,000 people. There are much more cases of the death among recruits, not on the battlefield, of course, where the situation is quite tense. Right now, there are more often cases when the recruits not die in the recruit points. Recently, about 40 such incidents happened within the last year, and no proofs of that situation. Is this Russia to blame for this? No, Mr. Bodanov. Just analyze the situation. This is your reflection. And you see yourself. And it has nothing to do with Russia. I mean, the loss of the manpower, the readiness of the Zelensky regime is ready to arm everyone. We've already talked about the mobilization age to 18 years. Right now, the authorities are reconsidering all those who have an exemption from duty. And right now, the authorities are focusing on journalists and artists. The Ministry of Culture declared that since March 3rd, it stopped to deliver the excuses for exit from Russia, because there are many cases that such people do not return to the country within the established timeline. So why does it happen? Let us think about it all together. Maybe there is a secret. Of course, nobody doubts in Ukraine's democracy, its transparency of constitutional processes, electoral processes. All is good in Ukraine. But why no one returns to this country? Because no one wants to die under this regime. Behind this rotten Kiev regime hides the Nazi regime. All these facts and many others once again reiterate the relevance of the special military operation to denazify and demilitarize Ukraine and all the threats coming from its side. All our targets will be fulfilled. And look, on the 28th of February, the armed forces of Ukraine tried with the drones to attack the compressor station Ruska on the Turkish pipeline. So what is this pipeline about? It ensures unimpeded supply of gas to the Eastern Europe, including to Hungary. And the Hungarian authorities were indignated and viewed such actions as an attack to the sovereignty of the country. The official Budapest had strength and courage and wisdom to talk about this at the time when Berlin, which claims for some place in the world, and debates on the questions of peace and security, had no power or strength to say its word that this blow of the Nord Stream, which supplied gas to the Germans, is a blow to their economy, security, and the energy sector. So now you see how it's being happened and how the history of the people is being written. The European Commission was stated that Ukraine flagrantly violated its provision that non-attack on the military infrastructure and energy infrastructure on the countries of the European Union. And Russia has repeatedly drawn attention of the international community on the irresponsible and dubious position of Brussels, which covers up provocation and very dangerous activities of Mr. Zelensky, which jeopardize the energy security of the European Union. And apart from this, we would like to draw your attention that this cowardness showed by the EU capitals, which are unable to say a word about their own security, yet they debate on the security guarantees of Ukraine in particular. Your own energy capacities are being jeopardized. All those energy potential and streams that brought gas and electricity and welfare to your countries had no word at any sessions among the ministers, top ministers in the European Union, even at the summits on this occasion. They keep silent. Only separate countries are capable to defend themselves. Let's have a look on another situation, hypocritical one. There was an attack on the Consul General in Marseille with the use of the homemade bomb. And luckily, the consular section has not been damaged and no one died. The bomb was thrown at the vicinity of the playground. The video made at the Consul General helped to capture the perpetrators and bring them to justice. On the 27th of February, it was very soon, within 3 days, and it's not bad, the local court sentenced the locals without any appeal. And right here, there are no good news. They were sentenced to 8 years, and you would think that it was 8 years of imprisonment. But that's not the case. And we should stick to a philosophy approach to 8 years of home imprisonment with a ban to approach to the building of the consular section and to bear arms within 5 years. You just have to stay at home for 8 months and not to look on the scene. A very strong and solid justice system. As usual, we do not put any comments on the judicial system, but despite and contrary to the French judicials, which says that Russia is to blame in all the sins, but in this case, we cannot but surprise by this fact, because this is an unprecedented verdict. 2 persons who deliberately went to commit an attack with the use of homemade bombs, and which did so, committed so, are sentenced just to home imprisonment for several months. And I wonder, if they sit quiet, for example, at home, if they don't broke things from the window, they have a chance to be liberated before their terms ends up. This is funny. And this is France, which overcame terrorist attacks. And I remember these marches, these demonstrations headed by the French president, when the whole international community supported and stand with France in their fight against terrorist activities. presidents went along these routes and streets to stand with France to avoid any terrorism. And that is the terrorism which, in fact, exists in France. And it's not surprising when the French citizens can know that for one terrorist act, they can be imprisoned only to several months of home imprisonment. And the French justice decided to put a blind eye on this act amid this large-scale anti-Russia campaign. We view such a demonstrative connivance against all those who jeopardized the Russian diplomats and the degenerate consulate as an encouragement to new illegal activities. And don't think that we are scared that the Russian consulate general will see the same attacks, but such attacks will be committed against all other missions, because for those people who are thinking what to do, I'm talking about such peaceful means or extremist means, needs to put in practice their own approaches while thinking that it's their justice. Of course, they will choose the extremist path. It will be completely nonsense for them to do any act, and they don't view it as a terrorist act. Such free pass cannot bear only impunity, but lead to gravity of the crimes. We call the French authorities to do whatever they can to ensure security of the Russian foreign missions, their diplomatic corps, and their family. There were many questions as for the situation with the Estonian Orthodox Church. Official Tallinn continues to exert pressure on the church. On the 19th of February, the parliament of country amended the law on the churches, and we quoted this on many occasions. And the Estonian government underlined it as well. In line with these amendments, the functions of the Orthodox Church cannot be function if it is associates with a person who is impacted by the foreign states, which jeopardizes the security of Estonia and acts against the principles of international law. And I believe that all the American campaigns must withdraw Estonia, taking in view that the US authorities violated this provision, and they confess. Irreversibility of such a verdict on the deprivation of the permanent residence of the Archbishop of Tallinn and Estonia, who was expelled in country in February 2024, decided to fix it in the law, which reads that the clergy, that the person cannot be a clergy, the person who was denied in visa on a residence premise, or which were denied for this reason within the next 10 years. And it's quite obvious. It's just a politicization of the legal sphere. Of course, we understand if there is any disobedience, the main head of such a policy in Estonia, Lauri Läänemets, expressed his view. Estonian, and I quote, won't engage in any dialogue with the church, but sue in case of a ban of its activity, end of quote. There is a perception that they sought to withdraw from the Soviet Union under the pretext of the freedom of religion, belief, and right now there is a perception that they are seeking to find such pretext to reincarnate these crimes. This is a violation not only of the constitution of the country in its Article 40, and I quote, everyone has a freedom of worship, belief, and speech, but a number of international legal commitments which Estonia voluntarily undertook. For example, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights on December 16, 1996. And this was Liberal Estonia, or International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination on December 21, 1965. Or, for example, the European Convention on the Human Rights on November 4, 1950, the Framework Convention of the Protection of National Minorities of 1995, the Charter of the European Union of Fundamental Freedoms of 2007, the Treaty on the European Union on February 7, 1992. And this list is not exhaustive. And Estonia exceeded and joined this treaty as being a sovereign state. These legal documents read that we need to respect the right for the freedom, conscious belief, and the non-discrimination on religious belief or confessional characteristics. And the Estonish government continues to do the opposite. The OC documents reads that the laws concerning the national security and terrorism related to religion cannot be applied against religious organizations which are not engaged in criminal or violent activities, and the state security should not be a pretext to restrict legitimate religious activities. Moreover, the guideline on the OSCE policy, which is called the Freedom of Religion and Beliefs and Security, reads that the dialogue between the state and the religious community must be built on the principles of the strengthening of the freedom of belief and respect of the religious communities. And I have one question. All this was taken by Estonia voluntarily, and all this is being propagated within its community. And I have a question. Maybe Estonia is not a member of the OSCE, and I regularly see representatives of Estonia on the platforms and during the meetings of the OSCE. They have their own flag there, they have their own card, they have their yes. So if you believe that you have a right to sit over the table, maybe you can remind yourself that except for the rights, you have some obligations to fulfill all your engagements. We are compelled to state that the Estonian authorities ignore the dialogue with the representatives of their own Estonian civil community, with the Orthodox Church as an integral part, that they're ready to act against any totalitarian regimes, and I quote, completely ignoring any norms of law and moral values. And we'd like to draw your attention once again and the whole world community on the illegal actions of the Estonian authorities, and we will continue to claim from the official Tallinn to respect human rights and the right for the belief, to stop persecutions of the Orthodox Church in Estonia, and the freedom of conscience. We can ignore this, is completely ignored here.
We move on, one more issue. Just a second, please. These are public actions in Berlin that have been recently held, and they have been held not only as anti-Russian, but they were attended by terrorist organizations. Let us speak about that in detail. On the 1st of March in the center of Berlin, there was a street anti-Russian provocation in the center of Berlin, sanctioned by the Berlin authorities. It was
supported by European special services, and one of the organizers is considered foreign agent in our country. It was within the framework of the exchange in prisoners on the 1st of August. Those were Yashin and Karamurza who were exchanged. The German side is trying to further use this operational resource in its actions against our country. And Berlin is just raising the strength of these actions against our country. And the neo-Nazi terrorist organization Russian Volunteer Corps participated and it conducted attacks with the help of the Kiev regime, attacks against Bryansk, Belgorod, Kursk regions. The members of this organization openly distributed recruiting leaflets among expatriates. And the Berlin police did not put obstacles to that. It just understood. They were aware of that. And the group, those who grew up in Germany, that group officially, his entry into Germany, you won't believe it, has been banned. And his actions are alive. They continue, and the German authorities just ignore them. There were multiple calls by the Russian embassy not to sanction this provocative action, and those notes were absolutely ignored. It's another confirmation of the German authorities supporting such actions, and it was public legitimization of this terrorist organization in Germany. Here, Berlin is literally playing with fire, and this fire could touch Germany itself. We recommend the German side to assess the risks that come together with the support of such structures. They have had a very sad experience with that. Regarding the situation on the Korean Peninsula, we are following the situation. There is a trend of growth in tension there due to maneuvers by the US and the Republic of Korea. South Korea, US Freedom Shield military drills. Today there was information about the South Korea US airplane launching mistakenly, as they said, 8 bombs on a living quarter of Gyeonggi city. Do I get it right that it was South Korean city? According to the data we have, around 7 people suffered. Several buildings have been damaged. Of course, we express our condolences to the victims, but I would like to remember once again that such acts they will not lead to anything good, especially when there is a peaceful way of settlement. The Russian side has on multiple occasions underlined that military drills, they promote conflicts in the region, and public statements by President Trump addressed to Kim Jong-un, the DPRK leader, will be reflected in concrete steps that will support peaceful settlement in the region and in Asia in general. And we think that Pyongyang measures to strengthen its own defense and we support the we think that such measures are legitimate to defend their sovereignty. Regarding Gaza, situation about the preservation of Palestinian population in Gaza Strip, as well as aid, building new houses, infrastructure development, and restoration of this Palestinian territory. Regarding the post-crisis revival of Gaza, parameters have been discussed: humanitarian situation and international cooperation in order to turn the Gaza Strip, into the territory of peace and stability. And today, the main thing is to ensure the stable ceasefire and security of civilian population. It is urgent to liberate all those hostages kept in Gaza. We call upon everyone, all the stakeholders, to facilitate and to contribute to the achievement of those goals. It will be facilitated by the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, OIC, meeting in Jeddah. We think the consolidation of international efforts to humanitarily and economically revive the Gaza Strip will put the situation on a political humanitarian track. And the issues of final status, the resolution will result in the end of confrontation that are to the detriment of the Palestinian and Israeli people. The Russian position remains unchanged. The resolution should be on the basis of the creation of two states, Palestine with capital in eastern Jerusalem and Israel, that will exist in peace and security. There is also the task of renewal of multilateral cooperation in settlement between Palestinians and Israeli people. It should be based on consolidated positions of external stakeholders and by mediators, the EU, the UN, and as the Russian diplomacy proposes, participation of key Arabian stakeholders. Priority should be given to the position of the countries of the region. Palestine, Israel, and international stakeholders, and Romania. What is happening there is just unbelievable. Published on the 4th of March, reports by Press Bureau of Russia about the attempts by globalists and European bureaucrats to stifle national interests of many states of the European Union. There were a lot of accusations against our country. It was harm to Romanian democracy, but Romanian democracy is undermined by its own political elite. More ways to undermine it cannot be imagined. And we were accused of trying to influence the election process. Do we take candidates away, candidates for the highest position in Romania? Do we cancel the results of elections in Romania? No, why would we do that? It's just does not stand up to any criticism. The Romanian authorities just do that themselves, and they do their best in order to preserve their own authority. The election campaign that resulted in canceling elections, the results of the elections shortly before the second round, it's the country promoting democracy just cancels the outcome of its elections before the second round. Have we not witnessed that ourselves? The West has demonstrated to the entire world how the democratic processes can be manipulated, also in Ukraine, when it was not the second round that was cancelled. The third round was conducted there. Why was the second round cancelled in Romania? It was not the candidate that was needed who was winning, but another candidate. Regarding internal Romania troubles, is it some new thing? No, it is not. We have repeatedly mentioned those groundless speculations, and again we say that Russia does not interfere into someone else's domestic affairs, and it's and the blame should not be shifted here. It's the crisis of political system that is going on there. It's just changing democratic institutions to some dirty manipulations. We do not participate in that at all. Instead of drawing the right conclusions based on their own analysis, Romanian elites continue the Russophobic policy escalation course. And on the 5th of March, the groundless decision of Romanian authorities has been declared about intentions to declare persona non grata or military attaché of Russian embassy in Bucharest and his assistant. This step will not remain unanswered. They have harmed themselves. Now, one more announcement. On the 7th of March, organized on the 7th of March, on the margins of the 58th sessions of the UN Human Rights Council, an event on crimes against persecution of journalists and activists in Europe. The session of the UN Human Rights Council will be held in Geneva, and 13 o'clock Moscow time, 1 p.m. It will be countries that have faced neoliberal censorship of collective West. It will be exchange of opinions and opinions about ensuring the work of journalists without obstacles in the countries of Europe. I invite everyone who is interested in this issue to join, and the link to join will be available in the text version of the briefing. Information about the event that was held from the 21st to the 25th of February, exhibition in Abu Dhabi, made in Russia, organized with the support of our embassy and attended by many representatives of the United Arab Emirates. It was such a large-scale event that was held for the first time in the UAE, and it was 80 from 30 regions of Russia, and the exchange of business contacts was organized for business exchanges among Russian and the UAE business cycles. There were artistic teams performing and digital space. And for the fans of gaming industry, there was a virtual reality zone. And on the 23rd, 25th of February, there was also an educational forum in Abu Dhabi, a talent summit attended by officials from the UAE and Russia. Serious specialists demonstrated many opportunities of developing young people, nurturing young talents, and there was exchanging ideas between the Syrians and the Emirates structures in science, innovations, and culture. It was very well welcomed by the public, and it provided another impetus to the development of our cooperation in culture and scientific fields. Another anniversary of relations between Russia and Botswana. It was an exchange of congratulations between the heads of foreign ministries of both countries. the relations of friendship and mutual respect develop, constructive interaction within the UN, and experience has been accumulated in trade and economic sphere. Solid agreement and legal base has been formed. In Russia, hundreds of specialists have started in such fields as medicine, mining, telecommunications, and they work in many national industries. They use the knowledge gained in Russia, and we hope that our cooperation will successfully continue. We congratulate our Botswana partners with this on this anniversary, and we wish them every success. Now about the coming holiday, the 8th of March. It's a holiday beloved by all of us. I don't know what were the initial ideas, thoughts of the founding mothers, as we can say, of this holiday. But in our country, it's absolutely unique. It's women's rights. It's their actual special role in the life of our country, society, and people that is always underlined by the respect of men. We have had a wonderful holiday formed, I think, and there were many questions if we have had historically women diplomats. Now there are no such questions. I will provide you the statistical data. But actually, for many years, diplomacy has been considered a strictly masculine activity. From the time of creation of the People's Commissariat for Foreign Affairs, there were also women diplomats. The first was, of course, Alexandra Kollontai, the first woman ambassador in the USSR. From 1923, she was in diplomatic work. She was a permanent representative for Norway and Mexico, facilitated the development of economic connections of the Soviet Union with these countries. 1930 and 1945, she was an envoy in Sweden and also a Soviet delegate to the League of Nations. She participated in the conclusion of the Treaty of Moscow with Finland in 1940, and in 1944 she participated in negotiations on Helsinki's withdrawal from the Second World War. There were also other women diplomats, and in Geneva, Ambassador Zoya Mirodova, who participated around 20 years, this post, Zoya Novozhilova, ambassador in Switzerland, 1987-1992, and of course women who worked in foreign ministry, very well-known translators, interpreters, and archive department, country studies, and the role of a woman in diplomatic activity is constantly growing, and nearly half of those who entered the ministry, start to work there, are young women. The heads of departments are Nadezhda Bayeva, History and Documentation Department, Ludmila Vorobyova, South Asian Department, Department of Partnership with Africa, Tatiana Dovgalenko. Press department is also headed by a woman, and many women ambassadors in the Russian Federation. Valentina Matvienko, ambassador in Malta, in Greece, 1997-1998. Olga Ivanova, ambassador in Mauritius, 2004-2011. Ludmila Vorobyova, ambassador in Malaysia, 2010-2015. Indonesia and Papua New Guinea concurrently accredited 2018-2024. Eleonora Mitrofanova, ambassador in Bulgaria since 2021, and before that she occupied a post in UNESCO. And now Irada Zinalova has joined our ranks, ambassador in Mauritius since 2024. Now it's a reply to your multiple questions. Now I'm ready to continue. Please Let us start with the question of international life.
Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I congratulate you with the upcoming holiday. I wish you all the best. But unfortunately, the question is about not a very pleasant woman. How can you comment on the statement of the leader of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and a number of other European politicians about further support to Ukraine through rearming Europe amid the situation where the US stopped supplying arms to the Kiev regime? You know, the confrontation course of the EU against towards Russia is unchanged. Russophobia is their meaning of their existence. The EU elites stopped to associate themselves with the interests with of people, and we see this trend for many years. Without any doubt, they are ready to sacrifice to democracy and electoral process and freedom of speech and security of journalists to preserve their power, or to push for the rules-based world order based on the on power. We see that narratives shift from Washington, and the main thing is many were inspired by the aspiration of Washington to still express their messages for peace, about peaceful settlements of conflicts. This what those in Europe can do. They talked about democracy, freedom, but no, I have an impression that those words only upset them, or literally, you know, they did not need any kind of peace. They did not want peaceful Ukraine. They are not talking about it. And von der Leyen directly said about the future of this country, mentioned about their role or some kind of swine. What did I say earlier? Or probably that's what Ukraine should turn into, in her opinion. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. All of this takes place amid the exhausted European arsenals and the statements of Washington to review the support to the Kiev regime. That's why we see some attempts to declare a new policy to rearm the US. This policy was once peaceful, but lack of financial resources to procure anti-COVID vaccines and to overcome consequences of the anti-Russian sanctions. It is very difficult. This means policy to loan money for military purposes. That means more debt for future generations of the Europeans that will harm interests and in socio-economic sphere and to humanitarian development. What we see today and the efforts of the EU authorities to torpedo not even peaceful initiatives, but only prerequisites for them, only words, are very revealing, and they hid their real intentions behind smiles. But now the truth is out. That all of this should be taken into account to understand the real motives and aspirations of the Brussels. And I'm not talking about uni conferences on security. It is not constructive work on the platform or in the CSTO. And now, instead of security, it's danger. One more question. There's been an Oscars awarding ceremony featuring the film of Jesse Eisenberg. This film received an award for a man in the second role, but it distorts the historic truth. How can you comment on the situation with the distortion of the historic truth in cinematography, and how can we fight this? You know, through many ways. Well, first of all, we should know our own history. We should given new technologies, information technologies, of new products about historic truth. I mean, films, audiovisual content, and other products that would be for various audiences promoted historic facts. Also, it means debunking the lies that are spread under the guise of the truth. What you said is important. I saw it. I didn't believe it. We checked it twice, but such a historic fact as Warsaw Uprising in 1944 that is very well known. There are a lot of documents, accounts of those who participated in this, and it seemed as if there was no possibility to come up with something new here. I'll remind you of what we're talking about. Only the Red Army liberated the death camp there, and we want our audience to understand how for decades we promoted and protected the memory about our heroes. We want to show in practice what technologies exist to, among other things, to save our young people from this, so that teachers in history and those who shape information agenda in our country, and we want to show how techniques to brainwash people exist. We'll talk about it later on. Thank you very much. Is Ria Novosti with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Yes, we are. I would like to join the congratulations with the upcoming Women's Day. We have quite difficult questions. We have two of them. First, it's about what you already mentioned, about the...
Мы могли прокомментировать его вчерашнее высказывание, которое фактически содержит в себе угрозу России, в том числе ядерным оружием.
Вы знаете, мы обязательно просто пошагово разберем это вчерашнее заявление Макрона. Будет опубликован специальный материал на
the briefing in the MFA, in the press center of the Russian MFA. We have Russian and foreign journalists with us. Let's start with the schedule of the Minister Sergei Lavrov. On March 11th, there will be negotiations of Minister Lavrov with General Secretary of the OSCE. He's coming to Moscow with a working visit recently. Personal contacts of high level with leadership of the organization reduced to short negotiation conversations on the sidelines of a number of ministerial events. This meeting will be dedicated to the discussion of the current issues under the mandate of General Secretary and the general situation there is here, which is still in the deep institutional crisis that prevents it from playing a significant role in ensuring security in the region. The situation isn't gonna change until the Western countries stop using the Vienna platform for their interests and violate the principles of the organization, and thus destroying it. Russia never refused joint, mutually respectful work for the benefit of all member states of the OSCE. At the same time, it's talked openly about the problems that appeared inside the organization and in the region. We expect a constructive and consistent exchange of opinion. Let's go to Ukraine. The Ukrainian fighters continued terror. On February 27th, the Ukrainian army attacked with a drone a civilian vehicle in the city of Graivoron, the Belgorod region, killing one civilian and wounding one. In general, in recent days, at least 6 civilians were wounded in the region. On February 28th, in the village of Mala Lepeticha, following a drone attack on the ambulance, a woman with the children were killed. They were being taken to the hospital. In the same village, another drone attacked first aid station. This episode of our briefing is addressed directly to the High Representative of the European Union on Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas. She uses a package of agreements that would have to become the way out through diplomatic means of the crisis. He said that Russia violated the Minsk agreements, but how come? His predecessor, President Hollande, said that he was not going to implement them because they only wanted to win time for Ukraine and to provide armaments to Ukraine and prepared them for aggressive acts. Madam Merkel also told that. Didn't President Macron know about it? Those are not some phrases that are concealed from the public, but those are quotes, direct quotes. They can be found easily. There are episodes alleging Russia in interfering into elections in Romania and Moldova. It's absurd. What does Russia have to do with it? Was it Russia and Moldova who substituted the Moldovan language with the Romanian language? Probably the authorities in Chisinau have Russian passports. No, but the authorities in Moldavia has Romanian passports. Moldavans now are called Romanians. Romania cancels their elections without any interferences. Only because those elections didn't have the expected outcome, and the second tour was just cancelled. And there are a lot of false words in the statement of Macron, but Minister Lavrov commented on this many times, even today during his press conference. And there will be a step-by-step explanation of the words of Macron. I think today we're going to publish this.
Thank you very much. We have the second issue concerning one of the subjects you've talked about. On the 27th of February, the head of the Ministry of Health of Moldavia said that if the Russian army, once again, that the citizens of the Moldavans will be much happier if the Red Soviet Union, if the Red Army had not liberated Moldavia. Am I correct? It's a blatant phrase, because if the Soviet soldiers had not liberated Moldavia, and the Soviet army consisted of the Moldovans as well, all those who lived in this country. Back then, there was no division. There was one motherland, common land, and there was no segregation on the ethnic ground. And if the Soviet soldier had not liberated Moldavia, then Moldavia wouldn't have existed. Right now, we see how the current Chisinau authorities just discriminate and eliminate their cultural identity. And they do just all those terrible things that were prohibited by the Soviet soldiers, which defended its identity. And the current authorities destroy the identity of Moldavia, rewriting the language, the culture, and flagrantly destructing the whole country. And this can be exampled by the economic figures. And this is a geopolitical and geostrategical plan of the current Chisinau. As for whether they would be happy today, all those who were liberated, I cannot repeat that. You know, very scary logic, but I can understand it. Let me reflect on that. All those from that generation who fought for Moldavia with the Nazis, who restored this country, who sympathized with the country, who worked in the rear, all those who did not survive, every time I think, what would they say if they witness all what is happening in Moldavia? Because there is no one to defend the current state of the country among those of that generation. It's a blatant phrase. I would like to say that the subject of the great victory in the war triggers nervous reaction. It's just unhealthy reaction. They do whatever they can to devalue and to cancel the significance of the great victory. In 2024, Moldavia banned any symbols of the great victory, including the ribbon. They cancelled the live cast of military patriotic films. Now they are reaching the songs, all the songs which are being sung by this country, in both languages and in the Romanian language as well. As you know, on the 3rd of March, the Israeli musical team was compelled to apologize for the song, a very famous song, Katyusha, at the music festival Mertishor in Chisinau, which was sung by everyone in the world because it is allegedly the Russian propaganda. But the Moldovans, and we have always believed in them, although who loved Moldavia, know, and we know that they won't be offended. And in Telegram channels, they launched an action for singing this song in Moldovan and in Russian language, and this is a decent action. But unfortunately, these attempts to falsify the history becoming a scope and the policy of the state. The Minister of Education issued a book, a manual on history, which distorted and put everything upside down. When the army of Antonescu, if you remember, he sided with the Hitler Germany, and its defeat under Stalingrad is being depicted, and I quote, as a catastrophe. The soldiers of the Red Army are called as occupiers, and the Romanian collaborators are called administrators. Such a biased approach in Chisinau is being practiced with regard to the new history of Moldavia. On the 2nd of March, there is 33 years since the Transnistrian conflict, and it was held with the slogans and with the calls to intensify militarization, and was a kind of a military parade. And Russia was blamed for unleashing a conflict. And the cynicism is that it was Russia, since the beginning of the conflict, searched and sought for the peaceful settlement. And thanks to our country, the military phase of the conflict was stopped. And that's what the Chisinau authorities did not like it. And that's why there are new calls to restrict our presence there. But that should be so by the means of the citizens. We have repeatedly warned that this can lead to increased tensions in the region and can lead to the forced scenarios. As a guarantor and mediator, Russia sees its task first and foremost as ensuring sustainable and robust peace, and the putting on the track the dialogue. And of course, such attempts to distort history are not being met with sympathy. And we hope that all the citizens, the Moldovans, will be strong enough to remember that they are grandsons of all those heroes in the Great Patriotic War. And I've talked about the films produced in the West, the films about the Second World War, which not only puts everything upside down, but incorporates fakes. And yet another history is just another fake to be consolidated in the minds of those who do not know history. And once again, I see the resistance of the Moldovans, and as long as they seek their history. Thank you very much for your answers. Is Media Corporation China with us? Good afternoon. On the 5th of March, there was a report of China which said that following the 2024, the GDP grew by 30% of the world global growth, and they plan to intensify the implementation of the strategy of artificial intelligence plus and the development of industrial capacities of the new type. How can you comment on the sustainability of the Chinese economy, especially amid the delay of the demand on the global economy And how can you view the Chinese initiatives? As you know, China is in the top within the GDP. China remains a locomotive of the global growth, and we believe that the development of economy is in the interest of the international community and the mankind as a whole. And within these terms, we consider this subject. And new technologies play a significant role in advancing the development, and especially in the new information technologies, and we welcome the results and the efficiency of the Chinese corporations, which open up prospects for growth. Of course, there are many challenges associated with this, but it happens all the time because scientific researches and developments are tied and interconnected with the challenges. Because as for the security in various spheres, I believe this is a natural logic of history, taking into account all these details and with the respect of the fundamental principles. I believe that we can welcome the fact how China develops its techniques and reaches good results. We stand for the equal access to technologies for all those, for the interests of the overall security, the reduction of the digital gap between the countries. We are ready to develop mutually beneficial cooperation with China and other countries in terms of new technologies, including AI. Thank you very much. And my second question concerning the economic development that is being restricted. Recently, the United States doubled the taxes of China and blaming Beijing on the effective failure for the fight against some issues, including the issues in the settlement of the Canada want with the similar steps, and how what can Russia say about the Chinese actions and the global consequences? As you know, this topic has become a traditional, but we know there are always some impediments, sanctions that are being invented against those, especially China, who was viewed as a competitor. We have talked about it on many occasions. They cannot bear that because they understand that they lose this track and they come to various sanctions. The trade relations between China and the US can be viewed in the context of the relationships of the comprehensive cooperation with Russia. They are not in any changes within the last 15 years. China is our hugely personal attention of our two leaders will advance this process. Moscow and Beijing do not share this logic, which contradicts the World Trade Organization, the protectionism and trade wars, and will engage all means to protect their own legitimate interests. And the strengthening of multilateral cooperation responds to the tasks of a comprehensive national development of both countries and stabilizes the impact on the world economy. Other countries strengthen coordination at the multilateral platforms, share the position on democratization of the system of global economic government, defending of unacceptability of illegitimate sanctions, trade barriers, non-implication of financial obligations with reference to the developing countries. Such a model of an equal and mutually beneficial cooperation is very attractive for our other like-minded states of the global majority who share our approach to a more just and democratic global world order. Is Russia today with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. My congratulations with the upcoming holiday. Thank you. And I congratulate all the girls and women here. How Moscow sees the quarrels in the parliamentary group of the friendship with Ukraine, especially taking into account the politicians' statements that within the color revolutions that on the 15th of March in Belgrade will hold demonstrations, which is called Day B. As for the upcoming issues, Serbia, as a democratic state, must, with due attention to the democracy and independence of this country, deal with it on its own. And secondly, to be honest, I'm interested more in terms of international relations, whether the Serbian delegation withdrew at the United Nations its voting on anti-Russia resolutions. That's what I'm interested in. I haven't seen any messages, and hopefully that with due account to the official claims of Belgrade, that this will be done. Hopefully I will see some declarations, statements. Yet now I've heard